Slowly it rises.
Hey, it's ODB, the Lincoln Addict. This is another listing review. As you can see here, bring a trailer. If you haven't already, please look me up on LincolnAddict.com. You can find ways to listen to Lincoln Addict Podcast, which is free. This is a 64 Lincoln Continental sedan, and I know some purists are going to cover their eyes because of those three indicators in the title, LS3. That is a GM engine. Let's talk about this car, which is pretty nice, at least from the looks of it. I think you guys will appreciate it. Also, I'll reinforce something that I've learned through the comments here on YouTube from folks that have chimed in on some to give me feedback. So certainly strap in. 1964 Lincoln Continental sedan was acquired about, 4 years ago, give or take. It was modified, get ready for this, with a 6.2-liter LS3 V8 and 4-speed 4L ADE trans in 2013. An aftermarket radiator, so on and so forth, was added. We're going to take a look at some good photos of it now. I know some of you are cringing. Let me know what you think in the comments. Would you ever put a GM engine in a Lincoln Motor Company / Ford vehicle? I know many of you are going to say no. This is a popular modification, okay, right now in the Lincoln scene, and I can understand it. Some people, depending on where you live, you don't have an expert near you. If you really look at rebuilding a Mel engine or whatever, in terms of, if you had catastrophic damage, people don't believe me. You can easily spend $5,000 rebuilding an engine. So everybody has a different reason. Some people just want a, quote, reliable car, although I remind people these cars were super reliable 60 years ago. You could drive them across the country. But again, I'm not really here to debate whether they should or shouldn't put a GM engine in one of these Lincolns. But we'll continue on. We know it's equipped with blue leather, air conditioning, power windows, of course, and some of the other standard items. The good thing about Bring a Trailer, if you're new to the channel, I always appreciate they kind of do the legwork here, and they talk about, it's, the powder blue color. They don't always exactly name the color, which I think is fine. I mean, they're trying to appeal to the masses, and I know that because our friend Larry Highbloom, shout out to Larry, he sold his car recently through BAT, which is short for Bring a Trailer, and there was some discussion about the name, and they're like, hey, there's no reason to name it the specific name that Lincoln used back in 64. So, even though this may not be the official color name, they do the legwork based upon the VIN tag on the vehicle. What you can see here is something I always appreciate. I own the same color interior in my 64 Convertible, and my seats were very similar, probably in worse condition than these. I like the originality of this. Now, I know some people this would drive you crazy, and you would immediately have your interior trim guy on the phone, and you'd be getting the seats redone. I totally appreciate that as well. These, I think, could be cleaned up with some conditioner and whatnot. The best way it's been described to me is like when they start cracking to a certain point, you're not going to be able to get past repairing some of this, but typically you'll see the front seats are worse off than the rear, and that could just be because they're used more, if that makes sense. What we see overall here is you do have the gauges are swapped out, and this is going to be something that is going to go hand in hand with the engine swap, motor swap, if you will, the Dakota digital gauges. These, for the most part, are direct bolt-in. There is some trimming that has to be done a little bit. If you look at their instructions on their website, which you would never see, it's just more of an install. Again, mostly bolt-in, but with a little bit of trimming back there. And this would be key because the sensors and things like that are easily going to adapt to the newer electronically controlled, fuel system and things like that. You would spend a ton of time trying to adapt the old stuff. It just wouldn't be worth it. So we show it looks like 110,000 miles. Of course, that's not going to be with this engine. And that might have been I think they're trying to say 110,000. That might have been 110K on the original engine was what I'm guessing. The seller states approximately 8,000 miles were added under the current ownership. So a little confusing there. I don't know if they're trying to say the engine itself had that, because there's no digital odometer on the original Lincoln. It would have been mechanical. And, oh, by the way, that was all swapped out. So it got new Dakota digital gauges. So I think they're trying to say the original car had 110,000 miles. And since the swap or the current ownership, 8,000. So you get where I'm going. It was installed in March 2023 by the Florida Hot Rods in Miami. And you could see there some of the specifics. Now, I was recently down in the Miami area with my friend Tony, and there's a guy down there that I know that does a lot of LS swaps. I actually don't know if his shop is called Florida Hot Rods, but he does really, really nice work. We'll go back to the engine swap here in a minute. You've got a photo underneath showing the exhaust. Here is the plate, I call it the trim tag or VIN tag, that we don't always get on eBay, unfortunately. And what we can see, it looks like it's never been removed, which is a good thing. They break all this down, so I don't have to rattle this stuff off. Basically, as we know, it's a four-door sedan, powder blue paint, blue leather interior. Now, I want to thank the individual that chimed in. I believe someone said that they did not use the letter I because it can be confused for a 1, which would probably be a good example here. So if you count, I believe K is the 11th letter. So you would think November. However, because they did not use I, and if that individual could chime in to make sure I'm saying this right, they did not use I. So what that meant is by skipping that letter, that means K would equal October. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. So you get where I'm going. But bottom line is the K represents the month, which would have been October, and the 11 represents the day of the month. So that gives us the insight. The key thing here is, if you recall, I talk about the 4 is always here. So it's the 5,391st in the production run. So a little bit earlier, ironically enough, today is September 27th. And depending on certain sites I've been on, they always talk about September 27th was the day that these cars were introduced. However, I actually have an original press kit from these cars, and it actually indicates that it was a little bit earlier, that it was announced. And then on October, I think 2nd, 1963 is when they were in dealerships. The reason why I say that is the production started in August, if I remember correctly, of 1963. So about 2 months into the production, which would give you this kind of lower number, sequential 5,391st vehicle built for that model year. The DSO is Los Angeles. If you've been a fan of this channel, I appreciate it. And of course, 52 is key because it's a warm climate state. No humidity, not kind of a rust belt, if you will, state. And then we have some of the other information here that is kind of standard for the most part. The 430 would be the N code. I want to go back to the engine swap here. Now, I know a lot of people would say, why would you do this? There is a certain crowd that is going to get into this car and turn the key, and they just want to drive and enjoy the car, okay? I've ridden in LS swapped Lincolns, especially with the right exhaust. They sound amazing, okay? You would never know, and I'll give you an example. Last September, a year ago, I was in California for cruising for a cure, and I rode in my friend Roberto's LS swap Lincoln. He got a lot of thumbs up. He got a lot of people going, hey, this car looks great. He never even opened the hood. Nobody even knew that it had an LS engine in it. And I think that's the thing. Some people go, hey, for the amount of money I could buy an LS, the power I have, the torque, maybe not the torque of the original 430, but bottom line is the power itself. You can enjoy the car without the stress possibly of, having to know a lot about this old MEL 430 engine or things such as that. The LS engines are known to have a lot of power, and they're known to be very reliable. Not saying that it's going to fix all of your problems, certainly, but that I think is the main reasoning that people swap to the GM engines. I'm kind of going through the photos here just to kind of show you from what we can see, the car looks straight. The car also seems to have pretty nice, I would assume, original paint. Looking at some of these areas here, this is the way I like a car. I mean, I like a car, that original feel, that original look. Now, certainly, we could probably debate till the end of the time whether this person should have done an engine swap on this car. But regardless, I think it's going to appeal to a good amount of people, not even just the younger crowd. It's going to appeal to people that want to get in. They want their gauges to work. They want to know where their temp is at. They want to know where their amps are at, how much fuel. I don't want to run out of fuel. I've spent a lot of money in my 64 Lincoln. I have the original 430. My gauges kind of work. Blair has done some good work to make a couple of them work, but they don't work very great. And, you start to just get in a car like this, and if you could put 50 or 100 or 150,000 miles with some smiles on your face, I mean, that's what people want to be able to do. They want to be able to get out and enjoy the car. This car, if you look at this ring right here, I also mentioned this is often missing. Over the course of time, as this ignition might have to be either taken out here so that this lower dash could be dropped, or just general kind of run-of-the-mill work, this little ring is often missing. And it just basically says ignition on it. And, I often like to look at that to kind of see, maybe how good a car has been cared for. Has it been taken apart? Or things, put back over the course of time? And for it to have all of these little things, including this little kind of ring, if you will, that reinforces to me that it's probably like more of a survivor car that hasn't had a lot of stuff done to it. We can see also kind of with it being a sedan, of course I have a convertible, but you have all this extra stainless in here. You've got your C-pillar lights as well. You can kind of see a lot of the lighting as I'm scrolling through these photos seems to work really good. So that's great. We'll just jump back down here to this part. And I think the person that did this swap, although you might look at some of these things and go, well, maybe not a fan favorite of some of it. I think it was done really nicely. I've seen nice swaps. There's a car running around with a Hemi in it, a 60s Lincoln that sold for a lot of money. And it's a newer Hemi-style engine. You can see here, this isn't more than likely like a junkyard engine. This looks like a nice setup. You've got build photos. You've got invoices. Install complete LS, $7,500 just to install it. Engine bay paint, $2,500. This person has spent the money to do the car, at least in their mind, right. Now, I know some of us would look at this and go, wow, okay, 9,900 engine, for $9,900, a $4,000 trans, again, 4L80. They didn't go with just a 4L60E. You've got your engine harness, your front pulley kit. I mean, look at this right here, $38,141.90. It's a lot of money, okay? They're being very clear here that the car is not perfect. This is the type of thing, depending on if the car was sitting in the California sunshine, may not rust. The good news is, sometimes you'll have the dash crack. What I would tell you is you can source these dash pads. So there's a couple of options. Typically you can call Lincoln Land and probably get one. There is another place. Jay Leno has done a review of a place called, I think, Just Dashes or something like that. They're not cheap, but certainly you could, that's an option for you. I like this car in a lot of ways because I do think the work and the time and the effort that was put into it was done nicely. Now, you're never going to convince someone that's a purist, or you're never going to convince someone that's like, hey, this is sacrilegious to put a GM engine into a Lincoln or Lincoln Motor Company vehicle, but it is what it is. Now, right now, this car is at $7,500. We can see right here. And I just got the notification a short while ago. So we'll look at some of the comments here before we wrap up. The other thing that I would point out that you may have noticed is that this car does have air conditioning. Certainly, I've seen some people do some swaps, and they kind of do them, 50%, 80%, not 100% clean swap. Some do the AC, some don't. To me, this is a winner because, you're getting the iconic look of the 64 Lincoln, but oh, by the way, they went through the extra effort to get a new engine. They did a nice install. They cleaned and painted the engine bay. Oh, by the way, they did air conditioning. So that is another win. If we scroll down here, there's not a ton of comments. I just added a comment before I started here. Of course, you're always going to have people like Patrick say, hey, I just do not understand. And I totally get it. I used to think that on a lot of different things in the automotive world. And when I stopped trying to understand why people do what they do, and I stopped really giving it made it easier to find out, or it made it easier in my mind just to go, people do what they want to do. They just do. Some people have hundreds of thousands of dollars in their bank account and they don't care about spending $38,000 to put another engine in. Now we'll see if it's a return on investment here. We'll have to see, but I stopped trying a long time ago to understand or figure out why people do what they do. I'm into airbagged Lincolns, and a lot of people aren't. They can't understand why we would lower a car. I try to translate that sometimes to, why would you do anything? Why would you go fishing? It's a waste of time in my mind, right? But people go, no, I find enjoyment. People find enjoyment in a lot of things like playing golf. And I'm like, you spend that much money to go hit a little ball around. Everybody has their thing. This person, if I get back on track here, they're asking for additional photos. Great job. Asking about under the deck lid, which we'll see here. Inside kind of the door hinges, if you will, behind the rockers, right behind the front wheels. And the locks, right? So they're vacuum operated. They're asking about that. And then they're asking for some more photos on the dash being cracked without the dash pad. So there's that. For the most part, an LS engine swap is like smashing the Staples easy button, great power, torque, as I mentioned, necessary to move the big car, and just someone adding their 2 cents. I'm curious if the engine has affected the MPG, miles per gallon. These cars don't get the best miles per gallon with the stock engines. I would say personally, and I think I like this question, they're probably getting better fuel mileage, I would assume, even with a souped up LS nice engine. So I'd love to see what they say. Of course, GLWTA, for those that don't know, that's good luck with the auction. We have old guy here, I'm guessing roughly double the original MPG. I wouldn't disagree. Now, this is fantastic. So we got A Campos 85, the seller. I'm not sure how to answer each question. Here are some picks, right? So they've done a good job. He's done a good job of coming back. And I think Bring a Trailer will snag some of these, and we may have seen that already, and they will attach them to the auction. So that's just a great service from Bring a Trailer. I did not build these vehicles for you to put a damn Chevy engine in them, Henry Ford. So some funny comments. He comes back with his own. Of course, here's my comment. I think this is kind of I've always wondered about this. This 27 appeared immediately upon me adding my comment. I think this is kind of like a ruse to a certain extent, which I'm not against it. I don't think 27 people have liked my comment, nor do I think 10,445 people have liked this comment since this car posted in the last couple of hours. So I think that's just like an image that displays there, and it kind of bounces around. So with that being said, what do you think? I personally like this car. There's some things about it that I really do dig. I love the modern gauges. I'm not against putting a GM engine in a car. I think a Coyote is going to potentially bring more money, but I can understand that those cost a lot more money potentially. Now, this person spent $38,000. I'm sure if they can afford that, they probably could have afforded a Coyote, but it's neither here nor there. They just didn't really care. They did what they wanted. I love the interior color. I'm a big fan of this color of the car. and it has, again, the modern gauges, Dakota Digital. They sell these. I've used their products in the past. They're great, fantastic products. And I'm curious what you guys think. Do you think it's going to sell? Let's play that game. What do you think it will sell for? I'm going to say 40 to 55,000. I wanted to say 40 to 50,000, but every time I put my feedback or opinion out there, it tends to not hit that number. Now, I hope this person does get even more, 60, 70,000. I think would be a lot, a very strong number for a sedan. And I know you're probably thinking, why do you think that? Well, number one, I think this car is nice. Number two, they spent 38 grand just in the swap itself, which is a huge component of this car, a big selling point, if you will. The key component is, I think it's a nice car. If you took away and you put the MEL 430 back in and you said, what would this car cost? We've seen the cars go up in value. You're probably going to be at least 20, 25 grand to buy a sedan this nice. Now, that wasn't the case 10 or 15 years ago. I totally get it. But let's just say, for sake of argument, you paid 15, maybe 20 grand for this stock car. Okay. And then you go, well, I want to rebuild the engine, or I want to do an engine swap. In this case, he spent almost 40K just for the swap. If you had 20 in the car and you did 40 for the swap, which is, again, looks like nice work, that's a lot of money. That's 60 grand you're almost at. That doesn't include, hey, maybe the tires were rotted out. Hey, maybe I need to do this, and this. Maybe the drive shaft, all of that work has to be done, right? Obviously, the drive shaft has to mat to the 4L80E. There's other things, the interior and stuff like that. So anyways, with that being said, I'm going to close this one down. Thank you guys so much for the support. Let me know what you think. I appreciate the support. ODB, we're out of here.